Hello everyone and welcome to a discussion on how to crack the verbal sectional of CAT and how particularly to prepare for this over the next 3 months. I am sure most of the aspirants out there belong to two categories. One is a group that probably has been preparing for almost a year now. Another is a group that probably began preparing over the last 3 months. Whichever group you belong to, the sectional is the same for everyone. And how do we maximize our preparation over the next 3 months is what we've got to look at. Let's first examine what the CAT has been like over the last few years, particularly from 2015-16 to 17. We find that the CAT's verbal sectional has not changed, has been consistent. With the 34 questions given for 60 minutes, it has had 5 RCs carrying 24 questions, 3 RCs carrying 6 questions each, and 2 RCs carrying 3 questions each. The non-RC questions or the verbal ability questions have been largely 4 parajumbles, 3 summary questions, and 3 out of context questions. Now, since it's been consistent this way, let's first look at how do we maximize our skills in these question types, assuming that the format is going to be the same. We'll also look at how to address the conventional and the diverse question types that actually make for the verbal sectional. If you examine the various question types, you will find that yes, while the RCs directly depend upon our reading skills, the non-RC questions too, whether it's a summary or a parajumble or an out of context question, depend on our ability to read and comprehend, which means everything boils down to my ability to read and comprehend well. Since reading skills are such an important aspect of cracking the verbal sectional these days, let's examine how to improve on our reading skills, or how rather to build on our reading skills in the next 3 months, and then look at the other question types. So, for both these groups that I was referring to, the first group which has prepared over a larger number of months, close to a year, I am sure as far as reading is concerned, your basic skills will be in place. And what are the basic skills? Your ability to focus, to concentrate on what you are reading, to comprehend diverse ideas, to a certain extent identify question types, and to quite an extent even identify what your strengths and weaknesses are. Perhaps what you are still lacking in or you are still struggling with would be the speed of solving RCs and your accuracy with regard to the questions. These can be your major concerns. For the group that began preparation over the last couple of months, perhaps you are still developing focus, concentration, comprehension. Perhaps you are still figuring out or understanding different question types. Speed and accuracy, including selection of questions and passages, is something that's yet to come, which means I'm still grappling with the basic skills here. Whatever it be, when it comes to reading, 3 major concerns surface. These are the concerns that we will look at addressing with a strategy or a prep plan for the next 3 months. So, what is one primary concern with regard to RC? Ability to comprehend diverse RCs, RCs that are to do from diverse fields. That's 1. 2. Developing speed and stamina. And 3. Achieving accuracy with questions. What is this problem with comprehension of diverse passages? I could be someone who solved about 50 passages by now. I could be someone who solved about 150 passages by now. But my concern remains as to, have I read diverse enough topics? Has my reading covered all the subjects? And if not, what if I come across a subject or a topic that I've never come across. Will I find that challenging? Will it affect my comprehension? Not really. This needn't be your concern, because as long as you've developed an ability to read sentences, comprehend those sentences, put all of the sentences together and pull out the ideas that surface from these sentences, put all important ideas and relate to the main idea or the main point that the author is making, things should be fine. If you are in a position to comprehend sentences, put the ideas together, comprehend the main idea, it doesn't really matter what subject or topic we are looking at. Our second concern, that of speed and building stamina. Remember, cultivating speed of reading and building stamina depends on back-to-back solving of RCs. The only way in which you will cultivate this is by looking at solving RCs on an everyday basis for an hour or an hour and a half every day, a 3 to 5 RCs, perhaps starting with a 3 and then building on to a 4 and then a 5 RCs back to back. Working on speed of reading by giving oneself less time per passage, at the same time also thereby building stamina of reading. Initially, when you begin solving 2 RCs at a stretch, you will find that your comprehension of the second RC is slightly lower because your concentration is affected. When you do 3 RCs at a stretch, you will find that 1 and 2 go fairly well, but the third one seems to be affected slightly because you cannot focus as much. But keep doing this. Remember, practice is the key to mastering these things. What is our third concern? Building accuracy or achieving the right kind of accuracy with questions. So how do I achieve accuracy on questions? One of the flaws in our approach to verbal aptitude is the failure to analyze questions. I answer a question, I check its answer key, and that suffices for me. I believe that 2 is not the option, 3 is the option, and that's about it. I fail to analyze why is 2 the correct answer, why is 3 incorrect. This stems from a failure to understand that beneath all that language given to me, beneath all those sentences and the ideas in those sentences are logical patterns and logical thought. The moment I am able to see underlying thought patterns, understand how option distractors are created and how I go about eliminating options, such an approach and such analysis helps me tremendously. The more I analyze a question, the better my understanding of this, and therefore the chances are that when I come across any such logical thought in some other RC or in some other question, I am bound to get this right, because I have recognized that this idea is patterned on this line. Just as I spend about 1 minute answering a question, I should probably be spending 2 or 3 minutes analyzing the question. The key to achieving accuracy in verbal is nothing but analysis of verbal. Not to take things for granted, but to analyze and try to run the pattern of reasoning in your mind. And thus, I reinforce my learning. Generally, any analysis will reveal 3 kinds of gaps. 1. Questions that I attempted with confidence, but which turned out to be wrong. I confidently attempted these questions, but they turned out to be wrong. Now, that's certainly a gap in my understanding. Why is it a gap? Because I believed this question to be right. I thought this was the reasoning of this question, but it turned out to be wrong. So my understanding of this question or the way in which I reason out this question is incorrect. That requires a discussion with my faculty or an understanding of why this reasoning is incorrect. The second gap that can surface is that of questions that I cannot attempt because I find them new or difficult. A new question type, I have not come across this question type and therefore I do not understand what this question expects or how this question is to be reasoned out. Now that's a gap in my learning which I will discuss with my faculty and get it resolved. Or let's say a question type turns out to be difficult. I find such questions difficult. So why do I find such questions difficult? They are a weakness. I am somehow not able to read so effectively that I am able to get this title question right or an inference right, etc. Whatever it is, now that's a gap in your learning. The third question type that you are addressing here is a question type that you find rather easy, and therefore when you decided to take a passage, that question type was in your scheme of things. You wanted to attempt that question type, but when it came down to it, you suddenly could not manage it because there wasn't enough time. You found that the question was taking too much time. Now that's again a gap. It's a different kind of gap here. It's a gap in my assessment of myself and the speed that I require to solve such a question. Now, these are gaps that will need to be resolved. How do you resolve these gaps? Discuss with your faculty, discuss with your peer group, read and understand, get to the bottom of how these questions are to be reasoned. How can I solve more of the difficult questions and thus make it a strength for me? Now this needs some analysis. So what can be a 3-month strategy for RCs and for the other verbal aptitude questions? Let's look at RC first. Month 1, assuming that my basic comprehension is in place, focus, concentration and even identifying question types is in place. Let's solve 3 to 5 passages back to back every day. Now I am working on my speed and stamina. There's comprehension of course, but speed and stamina is the focus. So when I solve a 3 to 5 passages every day back to back, I am developing my ability to concentrate at a stretch for 3 passages or 4 or 5. Gradually increase the number. You could spend about 45 minutes every day doing RCs. Month 2, my focus is largely on building stamina, speed, but also building accuracy, which is why while I take a 4 to 5 RCs back to back every day, I will also focus on analyzing these passages. It's important for me to try achieving an accuracy of 80%. I try to reach an accuracy of 80%. Even if I am somewhere at a 70–75%, that should be good enough. Now, what is this analysis all about? Ideally, I should be able to give a 2 hours for RC solving during this phase, which is a 1 hour of solving these 4 or 5 RCs and another hour to analyze these RCs. The analysis will mean a lot of time given to these RCs to get to the root of why did I go wrong with a certain questions. Remember the discussion of the 3 gaps in question learning that we normally have. So it's about identifying these gaps in my learning and closing these gaps. The focus therefore is on analysis. If you cannot spare 2 hours a day, plan on taking a test one day or taking a 5–6 RCs one day and analyzing them for an hour the next day. Do not rest until you find what exactly went wrong with that question of yours and why is a certain option the correct one. Month 3, now the focus is largely on maintaining the accuracy that I have achieved, reinforcing my learning from month 2 and maintaining accuracy, targeting superior accuracy. So yes, solving back-to-back RCs is essential. This would largely be the phase where your mocks or test series would have begun. So, some way or the other, you will be solving RCs every day. While yes, back-to-back solving of a 5-6 RCs on an everyday basis is required, remember the analysis is even more important here. Ensuring that the gap between a 75% accuracy and a 90% accuracy is bridged is extremely important here. Target nothing less than a 90% accuracy here. Read as much as you can. In fact, this month should be the phase when you are able to identify absolute strengths and absolute weaknesses. In other words, you know exactly when you come across an RC sectional of a certain level with certain question types that you should be able to get these many questions right. You know, of my attempts, I should be able to maintain a 90% accuracy. Target also a higher number of questions. While earlier you were probably solving less number of questions, try to maximize on attempts as well, but with controlled accuracy. And 80% attempts and a 90% accuracy of these 80% attempts would be a wonderful thing. Your learning or your analysis from the various tests, sectional tests or RC tests will be reinforced in the mocks that you are taking. So yes, there is learning, analysis and learning and then application or reinforcement of it in your mocks. And if something goes wrong there, you come back, you analyze further, bridge the gap and then continue with scoring better. So this is a 3-month strategy that you must keep for RCs particularly. So what about your non-RC questions? As far as the non-RC questions are concerned, there are the conventional question types, there are the recent question types. What are the contemporary question types? Summary, parajumble and LDC or out of context question. Now we will also have to assume that nothing can really be predicted and that grammar, vocabulary based questions, logical continuation or even your critical reasoning question types, either the argument based question types or simply the statement followed by an assumption or followed by courses of action or strong or weak arguments, that any of these question types could appear. So how do I prepare for all of this? While I am keeping aside a 45 minutes to a 1 hour for RC solving in these 3 months, I will consider another 20 minutes in month 1. In my first month, a 20 minutes, perhaps a 6 to 7 parajumbles. That's day 1 of the week. Day 2, now remember the focus in this month is simply to practice these question types, get the fundamentals in place, understand the relevant basics or the theory that you've been taught regarding a question type and simply apply that. So 6 to 7 questions, parajumbles, to be taken in a matter of 20 minutes. Day 2, 6 to 7 summary questions in a matter of 20 minutes. Day 3, 6 to 7 out of context questions in a matter of about 20 minutes. Day 4, some grammar concept that I revise, assuming that all of the grammar concepts have been learnt once at least. I revise these grammar concepts. And I also look at solving some relevant questions. This could take anything between a 30 minutes to a 45 minutes depending on how good or how weak you are with grammar. Day 5, I will perhaps focus on vocabulary building. Simply revising vocabulary for about half an hour to 1 hour once again depends on where I stand with regard to vocabulary. If my vocabulary is really poor, I would suggest a 10 to 15 minutes on an everyday basis along with the other question types, that is 45 minutes to an RC, 20 minutes to the non-RC question type, and 15 minutes for vocabulary revision on an everyday basis. Remember, our problems with vocabulary are not in understanding the words themselves, but in retaining those words. Retention can only be addressed through revision. So, it could be a 15 minutes on an everyday basis, but if my vocabulary is fairly in place, I could simply devote one day of the week for vocabulary revision, perhaps give it a half an hour to 45 minutes to 1 hour depending on where my level is. Day 6, I will focus on either logical continuation or critical reasoning question types. Or if I find the time, I could take both of these kinds. But remember, I am going to target 6 to 7 questions in a matter of 20 minutes. 6 to 7 questions of critical reasoning for about 20 minutes. Now, this is the plan of action with regard to other question types of the verbal section. Now, month 2, I will follow the same plan, which is 6 days I will focus on different question types. But at the same time, I am going to bring down the time to just about 15 minutes here. From 20 minutes, I am working now on building speed and at the same time also targeting accuracy. From simply solving and reinforcing my learning or my concepts, I am going to now work on achieving accuracy. So, let me target an 80% accuracy of the 6 to 7 questions that I solve of each question type. Even with vocabulary, with grammar and vocabulary, let me focus on tests that are based on grammar or tests that are vocabulary related. Since these tests are time bound and have a specific number of questions, I am able to quantify my learning here. Month 3, what is my strategy going to be? The same plan of action again, except that I bring the time down to 12 minutes. This is where I am able to target maximum speed with regard to these questions, and I am also trying to target accuracy here. So, a 90% accuracy that I try to achieve, and I try to finish these questions, that is 6 to 7 questions in a matter of 12 minutes. Parajumbles, summary, out of questions, LC or critical reasoning questions, 6 to 7 questions in a matter of about 12 minutes, and with vocabulary tests as well as grammar tests, I try to give myself less time and solve more questions and try to maintain a 90% accuracy. Now, this is what the 3-month verbal strategy looks like. 3 keys therefore to succeeding in the verbal sectional. 1, to read more, read diverse, develop such a reading aptitude that I am able to correctly interpret anything that is given to me on the day of the exam. Any passage, any level of language, any idea, I am able to not just comprehend it, but comprehend it in the correct manner. 2, it's not just about practice as much as you can, because practicing any number of questions and any number of RCs is another key to succeeding in verbal. But it's also about analyzing that practice. That brings up our step 3. Unless I analyze what I practice, learn from the analysis and reinforce the analysis, there is simply no learning that is happening. So, keep these things in mind. Remember, verbal is not as difficult as it's made out to be, nor is it as simple as it is assumed to be very often. So, let's approach verbal in the right manner, give it the right time, and yes, crack CAT verbal sectional in a really impressive manner. Thank you so much for watching this video.